my name's Emma Hall. I'm Key Relationship Director at Movin Legal. And we've set up this webinar today to talk about the past, present and future of the buy-to-let property market. It's been quite a crazy year, I think we can all agree. So who I've got joining today, we've got Roger Morris, who is Group Distribution Director of Kent Reliance for Intermediaries. We've got Andrew Montlake, Managing Director of Corico, who's currently on the screen. And then we've got Martin Reynolds, Chief Executive of Simply Biz Mortgages. So what we've done, we've had some questions submitted from brokers that they want answering by everybody. So we'll start with Roger. So we're going to have a look back at 2020 as a general review in how we have found the buy-to-let and the specialist sector has performed. So Roger, to you.
I think when you look back over the year of how the buy-to-let sector has performed overall, I think has been resoundingly good from a landlord's point of view. I think we've seen on average the tenants remain in the properties because of COVID-19 that haven't had the usual change in tenancies. I find a lot of my tenants can move on after a couple of years just to try somewhere different. I found the engagement with the tenants this year has been brilliant. You know, lots of communication with each other, and I think the industry as a whole has adapted well when it comes to actually how I think landlords are being supported by lenders with the products and what is available from the specialist sector. I think has been a really good year. We haven't seen the anticipated completions, I don't think, this year that was predicted. So obviously the whole COVID-19 has caused landlords the inability to maybe get in and find the right properties and have that confidence, particularly in that first lockdown, to buy. But I think since then, it's certainly stimulated the market to a degree in the buy-to-let sector, though I still think there's a number of landlords maybe keeping an eye on how the prices correct themselves in the early part of next year. But as a whole, I think the specialist market's really stepped up to support the broker community right across all lenders. And I think the year's been certainly a year of change and adaptation that I think is going to end on a high note. Emma?
Yeah, fantastic. So what do you think, Martin?
I think it's been an interesting time. Obviously, a lot of the specialist lenders left the market for a while during the initial point of the lockdown because, you know, there were the funding challenges that were there because they weren't able to get access to the Bank of England monies. So that meant that, you know, there was a lot of things happening in their back books with the payment holidays that they're having to use the capital for that. So I think that was unfortunate that that happened to do that. So it just meant that for a few months we had that market where if it wasn't fitting the high street, there wasn't as much places to go from the specialist point of view. That's obviously come back very quickly, and really pleased that, you know, the securitisation market opened up very quickly and at prices that meant that it was still advantageous for the specialist lenders to actually put securitisations away, because when we went through this sort of 12 years ago, the market didn't open up for a while, and when it did, the pricing wasn't great, so it didn't allow that. So that was a really positive move that we were managing to get everybody back out there. From a buy-to-let point of view, I think it's been quite an interesting one, I think, because especially in the press, the focus has been so much on stamp duty holidays and the challenges at 90% LTV that I think from the summer onwards, buy-to-let's probably gone under the radar from that sort of profile point of view. But when you're talking to the advisor market, as we do, they're saying that actually there are a lot of landlords that are taking part of that stamp duty and buying property now and using that stamp duty holiday as part of the price. That, yes, the price is going up, as Roger mentioned, but they're still saving that potential money underneath. So I think buy-to-let, as we're seeing, it's stood the test of time, as it always does. It's very resilient, and I think the specialist market, I'm just pleased it's bounced back so much quicker than we all hoped.
Yeah, and I never said to say Andrew or Monty, so I'll go with Monty. What are your thoughts? I got told off the other day, Monty. Okay.
Call me what you like. Yeah, well, it's been a roller coaster of a year for everyone, especially in the buy-to-let market. There was a lot of concern first off about, are landlords going to be hit with people who are furloughed or out of work or losing their jobs, so they're not going to be able to pay rent. A rental's going to crash, etc., etc. But we haven't seen any of that. Rentals have held up pretty steadily. The landlords who were worried at first are now, they're all pretty cautiously optimistic, actually. The stamp duty holiday changed everything. I don't think any of us really expected that the stamp duty holiday would include landlords as well in that. They'd be able to access that. And we're finding that a lot are now looking for opportunity. Some with portfolios are coming back and saying, well, actually, I want to restructure my portfolio. I want to release some cash because I think there's going to be opportunity in the new year. And I think we're getting to that time now. And as more people are struggling to buy because first-time buyers can't access higher loan to values, that creates more rental demand. So actually, I think it's held up and been a lot more resilient than a lot of us thought it would be. And it's good to see that lenders have shown that they are still hungry for buy-to-let. They're still showing it's an important area for them. Specialist lenders have adapted really, really well amongst it in a really difficult time. And I know there's opportunity out there because I got a call from a client about 3-4 months ago. And this guy only calls me when the last time I spoke to him was just at the end of the credit crunch. And I picked up the phone to him. I said, I know that there's opportunity out there because you're calling me again. And I think that's a feature of the market. I think actually it's going to be pretty resilient for a while.
Well, we've got a question that's actually come in from someone called Charlie Barker. So thank you, Charlie. Now, this probably will flow quite well for us, actually, so I'll skip to it. What's your thoughts on the outlook for the market and property investors post March 31st, 21? So post stamp duty not being extended, which I'm presuming what Charlie is thinking, what do you think the outlook will be? Will it continue? Will it die down a bit? Who wants to jump in?
I'll jump in first, if you like. I think it's going to be a potential two-tiered market. It feels like at the moment the first-time buyer in the residential market isn't taking advantage of the stamp duty as much because there's not enough lenders at the 90 and definitely nobody at 95% LTV. So the first-time buyer is struggling to utilise that. So I think post 31st, you might see prices move around a little bit, and some lenders, if they're not getting the volume that they have, move back into that 90% market. So I think you'll have the first-time buyer will take up some of that slack. And I think from a buy-to-let point of view, I just get the impression landlords just carry on. They don't look at necessarily some of the mechanics of the market, but they look more at what do I want to do with my portfolio. That's the cost to do it now when I want to do it. I'll just take that cost and I'll factor it into all the other aspects of what I do. So I just think the buy-to-let community will just carry on buying at the rate that it wants to buy at.
Okay.
My opinion on it, Emma, would be I'm personally, this is just a personal opinion, not a Kent Reliance for intermediaries opinion. I'm waiting till the beginning of April to buy. I feel that the property price range that I buy in is not affected by the stamp duty holiday. I buy around £150,000 is an average property I would buy, maybe a little bit less in Teesside, depending on where I'm locating. So the actual price correction is much more valued for my consideration than stamp duty. So I'm looking to see where prices actually get to. If it turns out to be a really negative market and prices drop by 10 or 15%, then I will take a bigger slice of that opportunity than if they remain where they are at the moment. What I am seeing now, specifically in the portfolio I have in Birmingham, is people who used to work in London, particularly for two large of the top 4 accountancy firms who had to live in London, and their working practices have changed. So they want to move back to Birmingham to where the families are. Their biggest request when searching a buy-to-let property now is desk space, how easy it is to fit a desk in a property. And I know that with the one property that I've been renting out in London recently, and Monty would collaborate this. It used to be you're nearest to a tube station, where now, when I was having the last viewings, the people coming around Monty had a measuring tape to see if they could get 2 desks into the flat. comfortable without it looking unsightly. And what we did during lockdown was we were able to source some cheap desks at the time, and we just sent out pictures of 3 or 4 sort of second-hand nice-ish desks to tenants saying, do you want a desk? It won't cost you anything, but if you're working from home, you're on the kitchen table, does it mean anything? And the response back was brilliant, either yes please or just thanks for thinking. Same with upgrading your internet speed. That's one of the other biggest questions they got. What's the broadband like where they specifically are? So I think there's a lot of opportunity to come. And I think it's a bit like Monty's customer. People will wait to see what that marketplace is like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd agree with both. I think it's been quite interesting actually, because the professional landlords, I think, are the professional landlords, and they will keep going. They will look for the opportunity. That the stamp duty holiday is a bonus for them, but it doesn't really make or break them. What's been interesting is the amateur landlord who has actually come back because of the stamp duty holiday. Again, that's my opinion. So we've seen lots of people who were going to, they've been talking about buying a second property or more likely a holiday let for some time, and have suddenly thought, actually, do you know what? I've talked about it for ages. I might as well do it now. Take the stamp duty holiday into account, and that's really helped me. So I think those might die off again. But the professional landlords are the professional landlords. It's their business. They know what they're doing, and they'll carry on regardless.
Monty, for the holiday homes, is that just the amateur landlords, or do you think the professional landlords will start looking more into that market as well?
I think we're starting to see evidence that they are, in terms of things like Airbnb and short-term rentals, that type of market. We're definitely seeing more landlords adding those into their portfolio, or talking about it openly for the first time, whereas they might have had it in their portfolio before, but they just didn't talk about it. Yeah, I think we'll continue to see a bit more of that.
Martin, I think when you look at Airbnbs, there's a number of landlords moved into Airbnbs because they couldn't offset the interest on if they were rented out as a 6-month buy-to-let. So a lot of landlords suddenly said, you know what, I'm going to rent it out as an Airbnb just to offset the interest to make it profitable. But when you had London, which had one in 40 properties in London is now, well, was rented on an Airbnb, you're going to see a lot of regulations to clamp down on that. However, Barclays have come out recently, they're saying you don't need permission to rent your property as an Airbnb. But I think in what you would class as the historical areas where short-term holiday lets were very popular, which is Cornwall, Wales, the Lake District, Northumberland, those sort of places, I think landlords will definitely look at that, Martin, because one, the capital gains at the moment, unless that changes, is just 10% on the disposal of that asset, and the profits can be ploughed back into your pension and you can offset the interest. So, and we expect an increasing demand of people on staycations. So I do think that's an area of growth without a doubt.
Sorry, Emma, I started asking questions.
No, that's fine. No, fire away. That's the whole point, to keep it quite casual. If something comes up, just jump in. I mean, it was interesting what Monty picked up. That was what I was going to ask about amateur landlords. Do you think this was the amateur only opportunity, and post 31st of March, we're back to totally professional amateurs are just not going to bother delving into it?
No, I think it leads off a little bit again with amateur landlords, but I think it's interesting picking up on that whole holiday let and that second property, third property type argument. Is a lot of people, we don't know if this vaccine is going to be effective. We don't know if there's something else going to come along. There's a lot of people looking for lockdown pads, and if they have to go into lockdown again, actually, do you know what? I might as well do it in Norfolk, not surrounded by anyone, and in a nice place where I can work and just chill out with some outside space, rather than being stuck in the ghost town of London. Because when you're outside of London, actually, you see all the big cities. Actually, you don't see as much of it doesn't feel like as much of a lockdown effect. It's just sort of normal life. It's really stark when you walk the streets of London. It really hits home about how lockdown affects everything, and the businesses closed, and it's quite a depressing thing. But outside of London, it's something different. So I think that whole change of work-life balance will spur a lot more people into looking at second homes and holiday homes generally.
Yeah, okay. With regards to limited company, so landlords continuing to buy in limited company, can you see that still being something that people continue to do it as a limited company?
Can I go? What you've got to factor into a limited company when it comes to advice is seeing a tax advisor, and it can there's many different reasons as why you would pick a limited company. So if you were first time buyer, first time landlord, then a limited company is a solution for stamp duty if your next purchase is going to be residential. So your first can be around a secondary tax that people forget about, which is stamp duty. Then there's the interest relief. However, if I'm a customer of Monty's in London and I've got a £2 million flat and I've got 300 grand on mortgage, Monty would most likely get me a better deal, even paying 45 pence in the pound on tax with a high street or one of his specialist banks than I would be in a limited company. So sometimes the math can work out depending on your indebtedness. So the higher the mortgage, the more relevant it is because you no longer can offset interest relief. But then there's also succession planning of being able to pass your portfolio on to your children, which is a different angle and a different story. But when it comes to the average, most people, when you look at their incomes, including rent, doesn't exceed 50,000, then it might as well potentially stay in basic rate names if you're not looking at succession planning. But if you're looking at those that are high rate and top rate and they've got a lot of indebtedness, then limited companies most likely from a tax advisor become that relevant option. So I still think limited companies do have a place, and I think the way the government's going to go will be trying to push more people into them, purely about being able to manage that tax income they get from buy-to-lets.
Okay.
I think it is understanding that tax bit. You're right, Roger. It is taught to the tax advisor because it's not just how you put it in a limited company, it's how you then take the money out at the other end as well. Yeah. That, there are tax implications on taking it out. And people go, well, I'm not paying me 45% tax, but you're paying other stuff. So it's getting that balance of understanding both in and out and making sure that it is the right vehicle for you.
Yeah, totally agree. As a mortgage broker, I sit firmly in the camp of I have no idea. I'm not a tax advisor. Get your professional tax advice, and we can structure it however is best for you. But that's not something I would provide advice on. But I know that going forward, it'll be similar as before. There'll be some cases where it's better to be in a limited company and others where it isn't.
Yeah, well, same in the solicitors camp. We get asked, and I'm very firmly go and talk to a tax advisor, or go back to your mortgage broker to recommend you to a tax advisor and go down that route. A question that has come in, and I'm going to throw this at Roger first because it's your patch. So this has come from Alec Lindsley. Do any of the presenters see support from the buy-to-let market in the Northeast and lending on properties of values under 75k or ex-local authority properties?
Yeah, when it comes to ex-local authority properties, you've got to be very clear whether or not that's an ex-local authority house or a flat. So I have a large portfolio in the northeast of England, and when we look at sort of the properties that are available in the northeast of England, you've got to make sure you know where you're going. We often look at buy-to-let properties as the hot spots is Middlesbrough and Hartlepool, and I have properties in both. And your problems with the likes of Hartlepool and Middlesbrough is those you can buy a street house for £20,000, and with it comes a lot of pain. So as long as you know the areas as the investors that are buying either live in the area or understand that property is your first concern, to be able to support properties below the £75,000 in itself, is something that we will look at, and it's something that there is some choice in there, and it's about understanding when the market will come back. Precise mortgages used to have a minimum value of £50,000 to be able to consider a buy-to-let mortgage. So it's an area we've been in, but Kent Reliance still has that 100 grand minimum value. But what I would see is the market starts to come back, and seeing where we are with mass unemployment, I think you will see more lenders in that particular space, Emma. But when it comes to return, you get a house in, say, Billingham with a cost of, say, 50 to 60,000 pounds, you're going to get about 475 pounds a month. Good quality tenants that will most likely stay in for 10 years. So it is a great area to invest in. But there's a lot of lenders will look at the time it takes to process an application and the rewards. And again, it can be the same with the brokers as well, particularly southern-based brokers, like, say, Monty. It's a lot of work for a little reward. And it can be one of those points that it's just not worth your time, where northeastern brokers don't get the big loan sizes that Monty would get, say, in the south. But I definitely think it's a great area to be in. And the COVID unemployment situation hasn't affected the northeast as much as other parts of the country, because it hasn't really recovered from the last recession. So it is a good place to invest in at the moment, is my personal opinion, not our group's position.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to comment on that?
I think there's an opportunity, and I think the opportunity is probably for lenders that will take on the whole portfolio, because if you've got a portfolio and X% of them sit in that sort of area, then as a lender, truly there's an opportunity to say, well, actually, as a balanced loan size, we're happy with the 10 properties there, because there's only 3 of them at sub 75%. So to me, that should be an opportunity for a forward-thinking lender.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Totally agree. I think the ex-local authority part is quite important. We see a lot of, I've got a few clients who only buy ex-local authorities. They get great returns in decent areas all around London. I'd like to see lenders be a bit more reasonable on lending to ex-local authorities. I think the whole point about some lenders having the criteria that you need to have a certain percentage of the block needs to be privately owned already. I'd like to see that changed, because I think with a shortage of property generally, there's some really good ex-local authority properties, and the only way it's going to change is if people are allowed to buy it and they can get mortgages on them. But if they can't get a mortgage on a property where there's not more than 50% or 70% already privately owned, it's sort of a catch-22 situation. So I'd like to see that changed from lenders in general.
Okay. Well, I have spotted a question from anonymous attendee. Thank you. I am going to come to that. But with the flow of what we're going, I'm going to just pop that at the end, so I'm not ignoring you. We're just going to move on slightly to the future of HMO properties. This is something legal we get asked quite a bit at the moment, because in light of COVID and social distancing, where do you see the future? And I mean, now this morning we've been told there's a vaccine. So come Easter, if we believe Mr. Johnson, we could all be back to sort of normal again, and it won't be a problem. But if COVID was to continue, could you see that harming HMO properties moving forwards?
I think there's a number of areas for me on that there is a lot of HMOs are in student areas. So again, if it continues, you're not going to have as many students potentially, because it'll be homeschool for want of a better expression. And so I think you'll see a bit more of that. And I think you've then also got the challenge from the valuer point of view is, if you're still in that COVID restriction, is sending valuers into a house that might have 5, 6 different people from different households in there, and that is a challenge of getting the houses empty for a valuer to go around. So it's a lot of it's logistics, and then the other part to me is the economic point of where people will want to live moving forward if we don't go back to a normality of type by the summer.
Yeah,
I would say I've got 2 HMOs in Birmingham, in an area that's I don't think it's particularly pleasant. It's right in the city centre, and Birmingham City Council are building some really big and beautiful purpose-built student accommodation. And I must be getting old because I look at that and think, wow, it's big, it's tall, big communal areas, loads of social space. Students are going to want to live in there. You know, you go with your mum and dad. Monty turns up with his daughter and says, right, there you're going to go. You don't necessarily put his daughter into a Victorian terraced HMO property in a less desirable area. But I did a lot of survey with the students after lockdown over a few beers of would rent one of my properties, and they're like, oh my God, Rog, we don't want to live in a purpose-built university controlled with CCTV cameras seeing what we get up to. We want to be in these small, locally run HMOs near where they go out and they drink and that social life. So you've sometimes got to think like a student to react to what students want. Do we see long-term a reduction in student population? It's hard to predict that one, though it is important for your business model. With students, self-isolation, so let's say you 4 students or us 4 students, if I get infected and we all have to self-isolate, it's kind of more acceptable within that. Where you have the problems is if you have a HMO, say, in another city, let's say in London, and you're sharing with a group of people that you're not that close to. One goes out who's irresponsible and comes back with COVID. We all are off work and then we have to self-isolate for 2 weeks. Then another person goes out and gets infected. And so other people's actions could affect your income, your life and your livelihood. So we are seeing from those sharers where they actually would now prefer 1-bedroom studio or apartments and pay a bit of a premium because other people's activities can affect yours. And I think what people are wanting now is that little bit more space. One of my properties in London where you've got 4 sharers all wanting to work from home and the place isn't big enough to have desks in each of the bedrooms. You can't practically have 4 people on the kitchen table working because, like, if it was me, Monty and Martin, we all might be wanting to speak on the phone and broadband widths. So I do think we are going to reassess, but it is about affordability and people are going to be stuck for cash. So I think the success of HMOs is there, but I think living space, quality of accommodation is going to pose a big factor, Emma.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we'll go on to the next one, which will lead into anonymous attendees' question quite nicely. So when it comes to the specialist lending, how important is it for brokers to actually partner with specialist lenders and specialist providers and being able to help them get deals through? Now we're probably heading into a more specialist. We don't really know the effect furlough is going to have on us or the effects that are going to come out after stamp duty. So how important, and I'll throw it to you first, Monty, is it for you to have those specialist partnerships?
Well, it's absolutely everything, really. Being able to have a relationship with a grown-up lender who you can actually talk to about complex specialist cases is what being a broker is all about. So this is where a lot of the specialist lenders have really excelled in the past and continue to do so, especially some of those who are here today. You know, they've been really good in terms of engaging with brokers, understanding what the issues are, dealing with criteria points that might not be fit for purpose, and trying to see how they can move them along and having adult conversations. And I think it is going to be really important for brokers going forward. So, and I think it's what we've learned really. We always knew that actually you're stronger together, but coming out of this and everything we've all been through, that partnership and that relationship and that communication between broker and lender for the good of the client is absolutely everything.
I would say your relationship, the way I would future this, if you look at 2021, the high street lenders are going to want to increase their profits. And what they will do is look to take profits from the intermediary channel wherever possible. If they can go direct, they can automate the process. If they can eradicate the requirement for a broker, our transactions with customers is falling. It was 2.4 million in 2006. It was 1.2 million last year. and the regulator is now saying 25% of mortgages can be execution only. Product transfers, lenders are trying to do their best now to take control of a larger proportion of that. The one area that is 100% intermediary required is specialist lending, and all the specialist lenders need brokers. And the way that the market's going with automation is never before has specialist lending been the biggest area of growth when it comes to brokers' own specific income. And it's about having a close relationship with the specialist lenders out there that have you at the heart of what they want to do, and work together by many different ways. And I think the marketplace in 5 years' time, specialism will become the norm, and high street lenders, wherever possible, will be just going direct to the consumer as technology starts to take pace within that area and de-intermediarize that particular part of the marketplace. So I think specialism has a huge role to play next year in the income percentage within the broker market.
I think for me, probably, I think with a wry smile, I say Roger's probably stretched a point there to make a point, but I think...
I'm glad you said that, Martin.
Yeah, but there is technology is going to make advances, but I think as you come to it, I think if anything, this year has shown the importance of the broker to the mortgage market. You know, we've seen some data come out that since the end of March, there's been 20,000 criteria changes across the mortgage market. As a consumer, how would you know where to start, who to talk to? Yes, you might start at your own bank, but even if you can go direct to a lender and automate, you know, because it's been digitized, how do you know which one to start with, and how much time and effort is to work your way around all of those to do that? And also, you know, the challenges of furlough, self-employed, what's happened to your income, you know, what is a vanilla customer these days? That gets less and less every day anyway. So I think the role of the broker is there. I think the challenge for us as brokers is to make sure we stay in touch with the customers. You know, that is the challenge. You know, it is very busy when you get people proactively calling you. You naturally deal with those, but you know, you talk to a lot of the lenders who've had product transfers for a long time, and they say bang on virtually month after month, 60% of what they get from the broker market on PTs is not the same broker that sent them the deal in the first place. So, you know, we've got to get better at talking to that, but the specialist part's there, and the high street will decline more. You know, what might have been a scorecard C pass now becomes a scorecard C fail. Nothing wrong with the customer. It's just an appetite and a volume and maybe a profit, as Roger says, play by certain lenders in that market that will push more and more into the specialist world. And it's that back to that definition of what specialist. Specialist, you know, a lot of people say I'm not in specialist market. If it's declined by the high street, you're in specialist. You know, it's as simple as that as far as I'm concerned. That could be self-employed. That could just be scorecard fails. That's special. I wouldn't even go as far as say, especially I'll just call that's broken. That's mortgage broken. So it is getting to know those specialist lenders, what they will do. Again, all specialist lenders are different. Some are scorecard based and very black and white. Others will look at it and you can talk a deal through. So it's understanding that, you know, as a broker community, we'd all like certainty of decision with flexibility, but you know, you unfortunately you can't get both. So it's understanding which specialist lenders fit your type of client. So do that research, talking to them. But I'd also add in the smaller building societies. They are all very, very flexible as well, and they will look at deals. So it's understanding your market, understanding there, and it is talking to the BDMs, making sure that you're on events like this, talking to the others where specialist lenders and the building societies are talking about what they will do, and just keeping up to date, because the market will move that fast. Back to that 20,000 criteria changes. It's understanding that and understanding what lenders will do, because something they might do this week, they might not do in 2 weeks' time. And we haven't even touched on the Brexit and the start of the emails coming out of what we'll do with somebody who's a non-resident as an EU resident, what's an expat. We've got to work all through that. So I can see that 20,000 going up very quickly over the next few months as well.
Well, this is something that, I'd say to brokers generally, this is something that they should embrace. This is I totally agree with Martin. We're all specialist brokers now, and it's all about customer service. It's all about personality. It's all about projecting your character. It's all about shouting about what you do and be proud of what you do. And lenders might in the mainstream try and take your clients away in certain areas, but if you follow the basic rules and do what you've always done, then you've got nothing to fear, really. We were, as brokers, we were born in this environment. Brokers came out of this type of environment. If you look back when Charcoal came out and Chase de Vere, in that type of environment, it was all about operating in the greys. That's where we excel as brokers. We excel in that area. So embrace that. And I think this so-called specialization, I agree with Martin, it's just broking. Just continue to do what you do well, treat the lenders well with respect, get into deeper partnerships with them. And you haven't really got anything to fear.
Monty, I think it's also about thinking of solutions. So we know there's a restriction at 95% and 100%, but if you take the Southeast, somebody that's struggling with a deposit normally isn't on the biggest income and they want to get onto home ownership. And that's one of the brilliant things I think that Kent Reliance have is 100% shared ownership product. So somebody can actually get on the housing ladder, might only be at 25% share the property, pay the rest in rent, but the equity position is something that they can then use again. So there is 100% lending out there, but it's just maybe a different approach to look at it, similar to Help to Buy as well. You might struggle to get a 95% mortgage because of your criteria, but with Help to Buy, at least you've got some form of empowerment to home ownership. And that's one of the things I would applaud Martin with the education that Simply Biz does, because some of the webinars that we've been privileged to be part of is just about arming the intermediary with the tools. And I think the one thing I've missed this year is the physical events that Martin has arranged more than any other club that I've always participated in as many as I can, because it is sometimes the ability to try and give people a different perception and a different perspective of what the opportunity are. And there's so many out there with so many good lenders.
Yeah, definitely. Well, this is a bit of a curveball, and again, this is from an anonymous attendee. So it's sort of two questions as one, and I think this probably highlights the fact of having a close relationship with lenders as a broker to be able to find out about criteria. So it's twofold, the question. So can lenders look to change criteria? One, where the property is small in London, i.e. less than 25 square metre, or if the property has commercial in it, i.e. restaurant. Obviously, restaurant at the moment with what's going on with the tier restrictions, and I know from talking to a few brokers and lenders this week, it is something that they're stepping away a bit from a little bit at the moment. So how flexible can lenders be, and how flexible have you found lenders be in helping?
I think it's going to be an interesting one moving forward from what the other two have said about people looking at different types of property. So actually, will the high street and the town centres be as full as restaurants as they once were? So you could start seeing quite a lot of change of use coming through. It's always down to what it is. I was in a sort of coffee shop cafe the other day, and somebody came into who was looking to rent above them and asked what they cooked. And they said they cooked sausage, bacon and cake. And I was going, where do I sign? And can I have a dumb waiter put in so I don't have to get out of bed every morning? You can send it up to me, because those three smells would be fantastic if I was living above it. But I'm sure there's others that may cause lenders some challenges. But it's an interesting one, because it's all about that future salability, isn't it? It's all about that if something goes wrong with the loan that we give, what are we left with? And I think that's the challenge that lenders will always have, is what happens if it's not there. So it's a little bit backward in, I'm lending it for that person to live there, but a lender has to look at the worst case scenario on that. And I think that's the challenge, as sure Roger will pick up on. And even in the specialist world, it's quite hard.
One of the big things that's coming into legislation next is the permitted development rights minimum requirements for living space will be around 39 square meters. So if you're converting office blocks and we're classing like a one-bedroom unit, including, say, shower facilities, I haven't got the document on me, but it's about 39 square meters, because with the new world that we're in, people need to have a minimum amount of space, particularly if there's no outside area. So if you've got flats sub 25 square meters in London with restaurants below, how active is that specific community? If it's in central London, it could be that those restaurants may take years to recover. And you know, Emma, you live in London, you need a minimum amount of space. If you and your husband or wife or partner, girlfriend are living together and you're both working from home, it's about that minimum quality of life. And a tenant's now going to start to think, do you know what, I don't want to live in too small a confined area. I don't no longer need to live in central London. And it's a different set of rules outside of London as to what to do. So lenders have got to look against risk. So Interbay Commercial can take a view on a mixed unit between restaurant downstairs and property upstairs. You know, it could be HMO, it could be multi-units. They can take a view, but when it's a residential occupation that small, you've got to think about the demand, and same with the restaurant. Two areas of negativity. The rooms are too small for what most people want these days, and the restaurants might not be in demand. So I think that's where you need the specialism of Monty's commercial team. With Monty, they've got a special commercial in-house team that could look at that and maybe get terms done on an individual basis, or look at leverage maybe into a larger portfolio to help secure that. But it is quite complex, Monty, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very complex, and it's really difficult because you always try and put yourselves in. I'd be a hopeless underwriter, by the way, because I'd lend on anything pretty much. But I think sometimes you do have to put yourself in the lender's position and think, actually, if there are issues in the economy or the market, what are the first types of properties that are going to be affected? And certainly something under 25 square meters is going to be up there. And I know in London, obviously, when everyone's having to come into the office most times, and you know they want to use a small studio as a pied a terre, or they'll stay there overnight for a couple of days a week when they're having a few beers with the office, and they'll just crash there rather than trying to take their last train home. How much is that going to be used in the future? And that's really interesting about the minimum living space. That's something I wasn't aware of. So I think that's going to change everything quite dramatically as well. So sometimes it's easy for us as brokers to look at it and on the face of it go, yeah, why wouldn't you lend on that? Of course there's demand for that. And in London and some cities, you can say, well, look, there's a demand for anything. You can, back in the day, I did a mortgage on the famous broom closet in Knightsbridge, which someone bought. I mean, it's literally, you couldn't swing a cat in it, and it went for about 150,000 or something. But I think those days are changing, and I think you're going to continue to have struggles with small studios like that in the future. Above a restaurant, I think is very different. If you're looking at above a restaurant in a certain area, then we see high demand for that type of place. It's a brilliant rental investment, because if it's above a restaurant or a shop, it's usually in an area where people want to be. It's vibrant. You might be in Fulham or in the King's Road or something like that, and or in Hampstead, and there's going to be demand for that type of property all day long, whether or not the restaurant's there or not. It doesn't really matter. So I think that's maybe something different rather than the smaller properties.
Okay. Well, I'm conscious of time to let you chaps go on. So to finish it off, it's a bit like being on I'm a Celebrity, where you get put on the spot to answer something last minute. Predictions for 2021 and beyond. Obviously, we were all prepared for Brexit, and I really thought we'd be talking more about Brexit and the effects it had this year and going in. People are barely touching on talking about Brexit at the moment. So have you got any predictions or thoughts about 2021 and what you'll be doing and how it will be? Who wants to go first? Martin?
I was going to say my prediction is 90% of predictions will be wrong, because that's the challenge. I think you don't know what is Brexit going to be. Who knows? You know, it's sort of been ignored, and now it's back on the radar. So have we done the best thing behind the scenes? Has it been carrying on to be done? Who knows? what's going to happen with stamp duty? Who knows? We've got a massive year for cessations though on mortgages, so that there's positive there. What's the regulator going to do? Are we going to get some more increase in fees that are being proposed? There's so many things that could happen. But all I'll say is my only prediction that I know is true is that more and more customers will need advice, and they will need that advice to make the right decisions. So my only prediction is that the intermediary market will continue to grow. The volume might be different, but I think the percentage, and I think you will still be busy. We're up at around that 80% of mortgages are intermediated. And if you add in product transfers to that, it's still around that figure of 70-75% in total. And the last time the mortgage market was that size was 2006. And in 2006, there was 30,000 mortgage advisors. There's about 15,000 now. So there's no wonder you're twice as busy, because there's half as many of you. So there is that market there. And it's back to my say, you should be proud of what you do. You do a great job. Be proud. Just make sure you tell people, look after your own customers. And I think you can have an absolutely fantastic year next year.
Yeah. Monty, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo that. If you'd said to me in 2019, predict to 2020, I wouldn't have said I've been in the office about 3-4 times this whole year. It's absolutely crazy. So what we do know is that 21 is going to be a tough year. It is. No bones about it. It's still going to be a tough year. There are a lot of issues to deal with, but what we do know, to echo Martin's point, is that our clients need us like never before, and they need that partnership with brokers and good lenders. We need communication to be better than ever. We need to focus on customer service, and advice is absolutely key. That is not going anywhere. And as brokers, we need to support each other. We need to support our trade body, Amy, look out for us. We need to support the business development managers who are doing a tough job in hard times. And hopefully we need to remember to be a little bit kinder to people, and keep talking about difficult issues like equality, diversity, etc., and mental health. And I think though 21 will be a tough year, there's no reason why it can't be a very, very rewarding year for all of us.
Yeah.
Very well said, Monty. I would say the year is going to come in 2 parts. Your first part of the year, from the 1st of Jan to the 31st of March, unfortunately, will be taken up with the pressure to try and get completions over the line, which is why your partnership with Movin Legal, I think, will become more and more valuable. Don't underestimate the intensity of March. March itself will be a really, really tough month, and the potential of chains collapsing could become imperative. What I would say is start to think now about options. You've got a customer who's telling you they can't afford to lose that house, then consider short-term funding as a solution, as a backup plan, just in case that sale could fall through, or the customer wants to step out of that 8 or 10 bedroom sale process. Then the second part of the year, from the 1st of April, you're going to have to then be able to react to a very changing economy. It'll either fall off a cliff, remain constant, or have growth. No one knows. So what you've got to do is to plan, and to plan for every eventuality. The one area that I do believe won't let you down will be specialist lending. They'll have an angle, an edge, the ability to adapt and the ability to change, but keeping centric to your customer, intergenerational finance, being able to see your customer once a year, whether it be by WebEx, Zoom, or face-to-face, will become important, and utilize all your skills to sell life, critical illness, buildings insurance, and intergenerational finance with the likes of equity release, but become absolutely meaningful to the customers, and you will definitely grow next year, whatever the market gives you.
Brilliant. Well, we'll bring that to an end now. So thank you, Roger, Martin, and Monty, for your time this afternoon. We hope everybody found that useful. This has been recorded. I did warn everyone before they would be recorded. So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.